Good morning. I'm live. It is Thursday morning and it is the 6th of June. What am I talking about? Shall I start this again? It's the 22nd of June. And I am reading out of Life as Carola. This is a book of the far memory of Joan Grant, who lived from 1907 till 1989, and she wrote books about her own memories. This was the second book published, and she writes about her life as Carola, who was a young girl. She was born in 1510 on the 5th of May. 4th of May she was born. And we are now at the 5th chapter of this. They have just met the strong man because she is an illegitimate daughter of Lord Griffin, and they have been banished. And so her and her mother plays the lute. She's an embroideress, but she also plays the lute. And they have been successful in playing for money. And Bernard has joined them. And we are here at the second part of chapter 5, entitled FRESCO. Bernard stayed at Donnelly's wine shop for 2 months, and when the autumn came, Mother and I went northward with him. He had never been to the Republic of Venice, but had heard from other strolling players that there the songs of a troubadour reaped a plentiful harvest. He was sure he would soon grow rich on his feats of strength and my mother's singing, not forgetting how I was to smile at our patrons and collect their money. He said, the Venetian ladies are renowned for their chastity, and the gallants for the strength of their ardour. Impatient lovers do not turn easily to weaving songs, and if men must carry to serenade under the window they long to enter, it will not be with their own verses. For it is easier to make love songs by candlelight than at high noon, and gallants do not waste their nights on driving quills. Olivia will compose their serenades, and I shall teach them how to grow strong, so that they can twist the iron grill from their lady's window, or throw her jealous husband into the canal. Although he could not pay for us to travel in a coach, Bernard said he could at least save us from having to walk, and so he bought us a little donkey. She was only 2 years old and very gay, with a shaggy grey coat and long velvety ears. She had only been trained to carry panniers, but in 3 or 4 days we taught her to carry a riding saddle, without lying down when it was put on her back. When the kind cobbler heard that we were leaving, he made Celestina, for that was the donkey's name, a beautiful bridle of red leather, and Gaspari trimmed it with 2 little silver bells. The old pack donkey was much bigger than Celestina, and as its panniers were shabby, Bernard had new ones woven to carry all our possessions, although it was Donnelly who had persuaded my mother to go north for the winter, by telling her that the wine shop had so few patrons in the cold weather that sometimes they never even bothered to take down the shutters. She wept bitterly when we went away. When Mother, wearing the hooded travelling coat of azure cloth that Donnelly had given her, and carrying her lute, rode on our little donkey, she looked like a picture that I had seen in some town we had passed through, of the Holy Mother fleeing into Egypt with her child in her arms. She often took me with her when she went to Mass. I loved the singing shape of the candle flames and the memorable smell of incense, but I preferred being in a church when the priests were not there to break in on my thoughts with their mumbled Latin. When there was no service going on, it was much easier to pray, because I could pretend to be looking up at the windows when I was asking God about something. I had often been told that it was rude not to look at the person to whom one is talking, so I could never understand why in churches the harder people pray, the more they seem to address their appeal to Satan, cringing as if they were ready to receive a scourge on their backs for their impertinence in addressing their Creator, instead of standing upright, looking towards heaven, where they hope their words will be heard. On our journey I saw a picture which I kept on remembering, however much I tried to forget it. It was frescoed on the wall of a cloister. At the top there was a heaven, where God, surrounded by his holy saints, and a company of musical angels blowing horns, was enthroned in the sky. Below them on earth there were many scenes, a noble and his lady in old-fashioned clothes riding out to the hunt, followed by their courtiers, a man with goat's feet, holding a naked woman in his arms, another man of great fatness with wine flagon and boar's heads and sucking pigs heaped beside him, a woman admiring herself in a mirror, while in her other hand she clutched a casket overflowing with jeweled brooches and heavy necklaces. And there were lots of other people I can't remember. Here and there skeleton arms were sticking out from the ground, and what at first looked like boulders were skulls or thigh bones. The path that the falconer was riding along led through a flowery meadow, but ended in steps that led down into a black pit. Hell was underneath the earth, and from each of the people in the earth part of the picture there was a little ladder leading down into it. In hell you saw what the people above were going to suffer. There were men on racks stretched out so far that they were twice their own length, women having their feet branded with irons, a boy being flayed. You could see all the muscles and veins where his skin had been rolled back. There was one scene I minded much more than all the rest. A ladder led down from 5 gallants who were lying on the grass watching a naked girl dancing, to where the same 5 men were lying with empty eye sockets and the blood running down their cheeks. The devil who had just done the gouging mocked at them as he threaded their eyes on a string to make himself a necklace. I think I must have been blinded myself once, because although I could stop myself thinking of the rest of the fresco, this part of it kept on coming back very strongly when I was alone. I used to wonder if the artist who had painted it really knew about these things. I almost began to believe in hell, and I thought the earth was so thin that it was only a crust over hell, like a crust of pastry over a meat pie. I prayed very hard to my Shining One to let me know the truth, so that if hell were really true, I could start learning to be brave about it. But if it were not, I could stop thinking that at any moment my foot might go through the ground, and that up from the hole would come terrible cries and the groans of souls in torment, mingled with smoke and flames. After I prayed, I found that even if I tried to think of the fresco, I saw another picture instead. At the top there was the same heaven as before, but the earth part had been changed. Now there were no ladders leading downwards, and each group of figures was shown twice in one group. There were two men fighting, and then there were the same 2 men with the victor binding up the wounds of the vanquished. There were lots of people being wicked or foolish, but beside them there were the same people after they had gained wisdom, undoing the result of their own actions. Hell had vanished, and in its place the same heaven that was at the top of the fresco had been repeated. After I had seen this, I wasn't frightened of hell anymore, because I knew that there is sky on the other side of the earth, as well as on this side that everyone knows about, and that beyond both skies there is heaven. No one need to be afraid of falling into a bottomless pit, because you can't fall into the sky. You have to learn how to fly up through it into heaven. I read the next chapter, Village to Village. I had thought that Mother and I were going to be so happy with Bernard, and that soon we should be able to have a little house of our own, instead of always having to wander from place to place. But before long I began to wish that we had never left Donnelly's. When we had lived there, we had a clean room and were never afraid of being hungry. I had known a lot of friendly people. There were children to play with, and when I was tired I could go to sleep. Now, as soon as the people of a village had begun to cease being strangers, we moved on somewhere else. Bernard was always telling us that in a little while everything would be better, for we should have become rich and famous and could have whatever we wanted. But soon even I began to realize that his confident speeches held no real promise. Mother was often ill, and sometimes she coughed so badly she couldn't sing. The rooms we slept in were cold and dirty, and usually we had to share them with other women whom Mother would not let me speak to. When I asked her why, she stayed with Bernard. We stayed with Bernard although neither of us was happy. She told me it was because she had no money. I said, "What happened to all the silver pieces that you saved while we were at Donnelly's?" Bernard took them from me. He said it was dangerous for a woman to carry money because she might be robbed, and that in his possession it would be safer than a cardinal's coffin in a cathedral vault. "And he has lost it? Who took it from him?" "The dice lost it for him. Or perhaps I lost it by being so simple-minded that I never realized he would use it to gamble with. 100 silver pieces, enough to have kept us in safety for 6 months, all lost by a bragging giant who swills his wine and cannot hold it." I was surprised about the bitterness in her voice, for I had thought she was fond of Bernard, as I was. I asked her, "Then you will never marry Bernard?" "What should I marry him for? At home, when he is a vagabond? Security when he cannot be trusted to look after a single coin?" I thought perhaps you loved him. Loved Bernard? No. To love once is enough for any woman. She must be a fool who loves a second time, for even a fish does not catch itself twice on the same hook. "Bernard is very kind to me. Is it wrong to love him? Even a little?" "If you see Bernard as he really is, he will never hurt you. His body is as strong as the iron bars of a prison window, but he is unstable as water. If he looked after you, he would give you such a rich supper one night that you would be sick for 2 days, and then he would lose the rest of his money at dice, and the innkeeper throw you both into the street. He might carry you on his shoulders for 5 leagues, and then leave you in a strange village and stay drunk in a wine shop while you searched for him. He has asked me many, many times to marry him, but I told him to seek some barren woman who needs a grown-up child to look after, or a kitchen girl who will love him for his strength. I still went on thinking that when we got to Venice things would be happier for us. But some weeks later, when I tried to find out how long it would be before we got there, Mother said the plan to go there was only more of Bernard's windy talk. In a town, it is only in the poorest inns that they let us play. For shelter in the stable and a meal of old crusts with thin broth to moisten them, how should we get a hearing in a great city? Won't things ever get any better? Some people say that next year the whole country will be more settled, but everywhere we go there is fighting. Our own people fighting against themselves, and foreign mercenaries being paid to cut Italian throats. What are they fighting about? How should I know the secrets behind the plots of princes and the intrigues of cardinals? Perhaps your father and his brother-in-arms know what they fight for, but I no longer hear even what is whispered in the kitchen of castles. We belong to the poor who plant vines that fill other men's wine flagons, and grow corn to make pasties for fine lady to feed her lapdog, who entertain the dregs of the people in taverns so that they laugh and forget their wrongs, and march to the tune their master's trumpeter sounds. It was a long time before Bernard gave up boasting of what we should do in Venice, though he seemed quite content to drift from village to village. It was always the same story. The first 2 or 3 days the patrons of some little inn would applaud us, and the landlord might be willing to give us a few small coins or a bowl full of meat stew, but within a week we were told that we were not wanted there any longer, and we had to move on. Then we would saddle Celestina and the pack donkey and set off aimlessly along another road. Sometimes Bernard made a little money by wrestling. Once he fought the village bully in an inn yard. 2 travellers who were watching from the balcony wagered on the fight as if the men were 2 gamecocks. The man who had wagered on Bernard was so excited when he won that he gave him 5 gold pieces. Mother managed to get hold of 2 of these and sew them into her dress, but the rest of it Bernard spent on a feast for all the patrons of the tavern, which delighted the innkeeper and didn't prevent us going hungry again 3 days later. When Mother tried to reason with Bernard, he said, "It is better to play the Duke for an hour than to live like a prosperous shopkeeper for 3 days." I think it was very unfortunate that Bernard had not been born the eldest son of a duke, for while he was emptying the ducal coffers of their hoarded treasure, his people would have been happy and contented, and his justice would always have been very merciful. Okay, I stop this here. The third one is Sorrowful Woman. I'll read that later. Have a good Thursday.